It's time to talk about Classic Sonic. I have a number of things I want to say about this particular version of the character. Before we get started, for context on me, if you're not aware, I definitely prefer Classic Sonic. I think it is the better version of Sonic for many reasons that I may or may not get into in this video. But that does not mean that I don't like modern Sonic as well. I very much do. I enjoy both iterations of Sonic. It's just a Classic Sonic is to my preference. And it's not because I grew up with Classic Sonic. While the original games were the first Sonic games I played, the vast majority of my childhood was spent playing 3D Sonic games. The adventure games, Heroes, Shadow, Unleashed. That's what I was really primarily focused on as a kid. It's later when I came back to the original Sonic games that I realized how much better I think they are and how much I like that iteration of Sonic more. But again, still like both versions of Sonic. I'm not a Classic Sonic fanboy. And I wanted to get that out there right off the gate here because throughout this video, I am going to be pushing back against a lot of negative criticism that Classic Sonic has gotten, especially recently. But I'm also going to be criticizing Classic Sonic myself here a bit, and just talking about this version of Sonic and how it's handled by both Sega and the community, because there's a lot to unpack here. But first things first, let's establish what Classic Sonic even is, because in some ways it can be a bit unclear and inconsistent. It's been retconned multiple times. Of course, Classic Sonic is the old version of Sonic, back when it had a different art style, and, the Sonic from the original older Sonic games. Anything pre-adventure is Classic Sonic. And now Classic Sonic has come back through things like Mania and Superstars and whatnot. And yes, kind of, but I would argue that's not exactly correct, because the Sonic that we see nowadays in things like Mania and Superstars is not exactly the same as the original version of Sonic from all those pre-adventure games. There are noticeable differences. There are ways in which they have allowed modern conceptions of what Sonic is to affect Classic Sonic and change it away from what it originally was. A simple example I would point to is something like the Chaos Emeralds. Nowadays, Classic Sonic uses the modern Sonic interpretation of the Chaos Emeralds in that there are only 7 of them, they come in that very specific diamond-cut shape, and so on and so forth. But that is not exactly how the original Sonic games handled the Chaos Emeralds. In the original Sonic games, there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that there were not just 7 Chaos Emeralds, there were not the Chaos Emeralds, but instead Chaos Emeralds were like a rare mineral that you could find in various places in the world of Sonic. We see that through things like how the Chaos Emeralds were of inconsistent shapes and colors in the original games. Likely because they were not intended to be the same Chaos Emeralds in every single game. You also have Sonic the Fighters, which just straight up has 8 Chaos Emeralds, and like, what's going on there? And nowadays they might say that, oh, well, those are continuity errors from the old games when they didn't really pay attention to these things, but that's really not true, because if you look in the original Japanese manual of Sonic 3, it's pretty blatant about it. It directly describes Knuckles having a set of Chaos Emeralds on Angel Island prior to Sonic arriving, which are then destroyed or disappear. It's a little bit vague what happens to them. And then Sonic comes to the island with his set of Chaos Emeralds that he brought from West Side Island, very clearly implying that there are more than just 7 Chaos Emeralds. That seems to be what the deal was in the original version of Sonic. However, modern Classic Sonic, which is a weird phrase, uses the retcon version of the Chaos Emeralds that began in Sonic Adventure, that there are the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and that's how things work. And that's only one of the differences between original Sonic and Classic Sonic, but there are other things, like how the small critters in the original Sonic games, they could talk, whereas they no longer seem to be able to do that in Classic Sonic, as they could not do that once the retcon of Sonic Adventure appeared. There's also slight tonal differences, like, yeah, Classic Sonic and Original Sonic both have a fairly similar feel to them, but there's definitely a much more deliberate effort with Classic Sonic to make him the cutesier alternative to modern Sonic, who is more focused on being cool, whereas Original Sonic had more of a blend of both cuteness and coolness. and many, many other things. I could keep going on, but you get the point. There are differences between original Sonic and classic Sonic, and really when I say I'm a fan of classic Sonic, that's not really accurate. I'm a fan of original Sonic, is what I actually mean. And classic Sonic to me personally is okay. It resembles original Sonic in a lot of ways that I like, but all of those differences are things that I'm not hugely a fan of, and I would prefer if we got something closer to original Sonic. So when many Sonic fans criticize and say they don't like classic Sonic, in ways I would agree with them, but I think the reasoning for that is a bit different. Because there has been a lot of Sonic fans lately saying that they don't like classic Sonic and that they want it to go away. They want classic Sonic to die, which is quite extreme, but at the same time, I find it to be pretty interesting. Not the sentiment itself or the arguments behind it. Honestly, a lot of those arguments I find to be very weak. What I find interesting is, where is that sentiment of I want classic Sonic to go away coming from? And I have a theory as to where that's coming from, and I don't think it has anything to do with classic Sonic holding Sonic back or any weird things like that. I think it has to do with a feeling that has been around within the Sonic community for a while and has been simmering under the surface and is only now starting to really come out in full force. I think a fairly sizable number of Sonic fans just straight up do not like classic Sonic and or do not care about it. And I say that because Sonic has been around for long enough that there has been multiple generations of fans that grew up getting into the Sonic series, and depending on when they grew up, they would have been experiencing a different iteration of Sonic. And at this point, the people that grew up with the original Sonic games are in the minority of fans. Especially when you consider that original Sonic was exclusive to Sega platforms, whereas with the Sonic Adventure games and stuff, that is when Sonic started to go multi-platform, meaning it could reach a much wider audience. So you have that generation with a potentially much larger group of fans that it can bring in, and you also have later eras of fans coming in that get in at various different later parts of Sonic. Like Sonic Colors is 14 years old at this point. So Sonic Colors could have been someone's first ever Sonic game when they were a little kid, and now they would be an adult. And so the majority of Sonic fans probably haven't experienced that much classic Sonic unless they've gone out of their way to go back to play the older original games. Which means that by now, the Sonic that most people would have grown to know and fallen in love with is modern Sonic, not classic Sonic. And of course, modern Sonic and classic Sonic are very different in a number of ways, and so someone might look at the classic Sonic games after getting into the modern Sonic games and go, that's a bit different. That's not really what I'm into Sonic for. To make a maybe not ideal analogy, say someone got into the 3D Mario games, and that's what they really like. They like those sandbox, collectathon-style Marios. That doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna like the 2D Mario games, because they're completely different types of games. Of course, there will also be many fans who do go back to the original games and turn out to like them, but there will also be a number of fans who maybe try them and don't like them, or never even bother to try original Sonic because it's just not what they're looking for in Sonic. And these group of fans, I would imagine them being a bit dismissive of classic Sonic, because they're like, that's not the Sonic that I like, that's not the Sonic that I'm a fan of, I don't care about that Sonic, I don't want to see that Sonic, I want to see modern Sonic, that's my Sonic, that's what I like. Classic Sonic, original Sonic, whatever you want to call it, that's outdated, that's old, let's move on to the newer, better Sonic. I think another contributing factor to this is that after Sonic underwent its change with Sonic Adventure, many fans of the original Sonic started to lose interest, check out, or become very critical of the direction Sonic started to go in. And so you have this group of older Sonic fans who don't like the current direction of Sonic, and then you have all the new Sonic fans who do like this current direction that haven't tried or don't care about the older version. And so they associate this older Sonic with these fans that they don't get along with, and it perhaps sours their opinion of classic Sonic even more. And so, for some fans, what is just a disinterest might turn into a bit of vitriol for classic Sonic. However, at the same time, there is still a large number of fans that do like the original version of Sonic, and plenty of fans that like both versions of Sonic. And, you know, you don't want to be too much of a pot stirrer, so I think there might have been a bit of falling in line and playing along that's been happening in Sonic in recent years. Like, oh, classic Sonic is brought back for generations, that's cute, that's fun, that's a nice little one-off gimmick. But then Mania comes around, and it's a huge big deal, and oh, classic Sonic is really back now, and people are loving it. And I wonder if maybe a lot of fans who don't care about classic Sonic in the slightest didn't really care for Mania either, and either just stayed quiet on the topic, or, you know, went along with, yeah, Mania's a great game for sure, but secretly, inside, they're like, man, I don't give a fuck about this game. And then those internal feelings start to turn to external ones when Sonic Forces shoehorns classic Sonic in there for no good reason. And I recall seeing a sentiment around classic Sonic after Forces that was, classic Sonic is fine, but stay in your lane, don't put classic Sonic in modern stuff, leave him to the 2D classic games. But then, Superstars comes out, a 2D classic Sonic game, where classic Sonic belongs, and we have many people saying that they are unhappy about this. What happened there? I thought people were okay with classic Sonic as long as it stayed in its lane. I mean, obviously there are different groups of fans saying different things. I don't like when people do that thing of like, people said they want this, and then they get it, and then they still complain. Because obviously it's different fans that want different things saying different things. I understand that. But still, I see this shifting sentiment happening around classic Sonic, depending on what's coming out at the time. And I believe this may be due to modern Sonic fans feeling a bit threatened by the impending return of classic Sonic. They felt solace and safety in the idea that classic Sonic was old Sonic, but Sonic changed after Adventure, and now this is what Sonic is. But now they're bringing back that old Sonic that I don't like, and I don't want that Sonic to come back because it's gonna take away from modern Sonic, the good Sonic, the one I like. Not take away in the sense that it's going to harm modern Sonic, but take away in the sense that every classic Sonic thing that comes out is a modern Sonic thing that could have come out in its place. I also think a part of this is that, in a way, classic Sonic represents an admittance that many people don't like modern Sonic and many of the aspects of it. I've seen many people refer to classic Sonic as Sonic, but quote-unquote, without the bad stuff. And to me, it feels like there's a lot of baggage behind that. Like, all the bad stuff? You mean the things I like about Sonic? So I don't know, maybe there's even a potential part of people feeling attacked by classic Sonic's existence. All that being said, this is all presumptions on my part, and I could absolutely be very wrong about this, and if I am, let me know. I would like to hear why people don't like classic Sonic if what I suggest is not the reason. Because boy howdy, have I heard a lot of people in recent years say, I don't like that there's multiple Sonics now, that's stupid, I want to go back to when there was just one Sonic. And me, I'm listening to that and going, since when has there only been one Sonic? There has always been multiple iterations of Sonic. Even from the very beginning, there was the discrepancies between the Japanese Sonic and the international Sonic. Then you have all the different cartoons and comics and anime, manga, and now the movies, Sonic Boom. All these different iterations of Sonic have been around for a while. But even within the core main games themselves, Sonic as a series has shifted multiple times into different forms, and I would say that classic Sonic and modern Sonic are very different, distinct versions of Sonic, even before this whole classic revival thing. If you look at the original Sonic games and their direction, their feel, their tone, their vibe, it's so very different than what the 2000s era Sonic games were trying to do. That's a completely different universe of what Sonic is. You cannot say that this and this are the same thing. They are very different artistic visions of what Sonic is. Even if literally it's supposed to be the same Sonic, from an artistic perspective, these are different Sonics, and so is this Sonic.
Alright, we good to go or what, Tails?
I've built a TV out of paper clips.
Yeah.
And reprogrammed a supercomputer using dishwashing detergent and a toothpick.
I know.
And so is this one as well.
Been too shy to express their feelings, but if they don't do it now, they may never get the chance.
You got all that, huh?
And even this Sonic is slightly different than all the other Sonics. They have their similarities, but if you really look at it, there are many different iterations of Sonic within the games trying to do different things. And I can prove this right now very easily with a simple thought experiment. So many people say that they want Classic Sonic to go away in the sense that they want two separate, distinct Sonics to stop being a thing. They want it to go back to Classic Sonic just being a different art style of the same Sonic like it was originally. But if Classic Sonic is truly nothing more than just a different art style of Sonic, then I propose something. What if the next big console mainline 3D Sonic game was a Classic Sonic game? Now, that wouldn't necessarily mean that it has to be designed or play like the original Sonic games, or even have the same tone as the original Sonic games. Let's say it was a very modern Sonic game. It had the same modern voice actors, it had the same kind of tone and storytelling. It was a big, crazy, epic anime thing, and Sonic fights a god in space, and it's all kinds of cool. But all the characters are their classic versions, and it has the abstract visuals and checkerboard patterns and everything of classic Sonic, and that's just what the game looks like, but in all other ways, it is a modern Sonic game. I would be willing to bet that so many fans would be so against this. I bet a lot of people listening to this are really against this idea. But why? Why not? They're both Sonic, aren't they? Isn't it just a different art style? Why would you be so opposed to classic Sonic being treated as simply just an art style change? For this game, we went with the classic art style, and maybe for another game, we'll go back to modern or classic, whatever we feel is appropriate. People would not want that. People would not be happy with that, because Classic Sonic isn't just an art style. There are so many things. When the series shifted visually, it shifted in so many other ways. The gameplay, the game design, the game structure, the tone, the kinds and amount of story present in the games. And these changes were not coincidental. They didn't just happen to occur all at the same time. They were all done in tandem with each other, together, intentionally. Classic Sonic and modern Sonic are most definitely different Sonics, and they always have been. When I hear people say they want to go back to there just being one Sonic, a lot of it I interpret as people saying they want to go back to there just being modern Sonic, like it was originally, because when the new designs came around, it wasn't like, oh, this is a different version of Sonic. It was, this is the new version of Sonic replacing the old version, and the old version was killed. From Sonic Adventure on, no more classic Sonic. We're not using those designs anymore. This is what Sonic is now. Even when it comes to classic Sonic things, if you look at the box arts of classic collections from the 2000s, they all use the modern characters because that's Sonic now. Forget about that old, crusty Sonic. That's not what the series is anymore. And it seems to me like that's what a lot of Sonic fans want. They want to stomp classic Sonic back into its grave. But of course, as someone that prefers classic Sonic, I obviously don't want that. I like that classic Sonic has been brought back and given a second chance at life. And I want classic Sonic to continue in tandem with modern Sonic. And part of me finds this whole thing to be very funny, because really, it's just history repeating itself, right? Throughout the 2000s, when Sonic got all dark and serious and anime, classic fans were like, this sucks, I want to go back to the Sonic that I grew up with that I like. Then throughout the 2010s, when Sonic changed and lost all of that stuff and became all lighthearted and jokey, people were like, this sucks, this isn't Sonic, I want to go back to the dark, serious Sonic stories from the 2000s games. It's the exact same thing, but the difference here now is that fans of classic Sonic are kind of starting to get what they've been wanting, the return of classic Sonic, which obviously I see as a good thing. That's exactly what I want. But now it seems like there's a bit of, I don't know, jealousy maybe going on, of like, why do those fans get what they want? We don't get what we've been asking for. Stop making classic Sonic things and focus on modern Sonic. Give me the Sonic that I want. And I know I'm being very snarky about this and poking a lot of fun here, but I totally understand this sentiment, but I do not think that is the correct answer. I don't think giving the one group of Sonic fans what they want and saying fuck everybody else is the right way to go. That's what Sonic Team has been doing with the franchise for decades that got us into this situation in the first place. Oh, classic Sonic fans who like the way the original Sonic was? Yeah, fuck you, we're changing Sonic. That version of Sonic is dead, no more of that. Oh, 2000s era Sonic fans that like the bigger epic storylines and stuff? Yeah, fuck you, we're done with that. We're moving on to kids' Saturday morning cartoon Sonic. Every time Sonic Team wants to push Sonic in a new direction, for some reason that also means killing the previous direction, which many fans grew to like, and I don't think that's necessary at all. We can have multiple versions of Sonic that coexist with each other and do different things. I've seen so many Sonic fans lately saying that there's so many different fans that like so many different things of Sonic, they could never make something that would satisfy everybody. And yeah, obviously, of course you can't. And I don't think they should be trying to do that. I think a much smarter strategy is to make many different types of Sonic that appeal to different fans and give everybody what they want in their own isolated packages. This is why I think the unification of Sonic that they've kind of been doing lately is a really stupid idea, because that's not really what a lot of Sonic fans want, I don't think. They want their version of Sonic, and trying to mush them all together creates a homunculus, compromised version of Sonic that kind of resembles all the different Sonics, but isn't quite what anybody wants. And for me, that's where my criticisms of Classic Sonic come in. One thing I will agree with the people that say they don't like Classic Sonic is that he is Classic Sonic, that he is built on nostalgia and the past, and what Sonic was pre-adventure, and that's all he really can be. I think that is a way overly and unnecessarily limiting vision for what Classic Sonic can be. I know many people do not like the split between classic and modern, but I see a lot of potential in it for great things, but only if they allow it to split even more and even further. Right now, allegedly, the idea is that classic Sonic is Sonic from the past and that he grows into modern Sonic by the time of Sonic Adventure, and I hate that. I think that's a terrible idea, because it means that the classic characters can never grow or develop or change or do anything because they have to be the exact same characters in the exact same places so Sonic Adventure can happen. And I say fuck that, that's stupid. I would so much prefer if classic Sonic branched off of modern Sonic and developed in its own way and did its own thing. Instead of it eventually leading to the adventure games, do something totally different and push the characters in new directions. You look at so many other long-running franchises, and they do this all the time, where they have completely separate, distinct versions of the series, each doing their own thing, and they can all exist independently of one another and draw from one another in potentially cool and interesting ways. One thing a lot of people don't like about the classic modern split is that characters from one version of Sonic cannot show up in the other. You can't have a modern Fang just like you can't have a classic Rouge or what have you, because that's just not allowed, because those classic versions are not part of Sonic Team's vision for modern Sonic, and canonically those characters don't show up in classic Sonic yet because they have to be Fuck that, who gives a shit? Separate the two, and now we can do something interesting. We can create classic versions of modern characters. We can have classic Rouge show up in the games, and I don't just mean shrink down Rouge's proportions and make her the same character. I mean reinterpret what Rouge would be like through the lens of the original vision of Sonic. Let her be her own completely separate version of Rouge that can go in her own direction and do her own thing. We've already seen stuff like this done in the past when they took the Chaotix characters from Classic and brought them to Modern. They completely transformed them into entirely different characters, and I think the modern Chaotix are way better than the classic ones. I really like them, and there's so much potential there for doing more stuff like that. And by separating modern Sonic and classic Sonic completely like that, we get so much more room for playing around to tell great stories. As they handle classic Sonic right now, it's basically the exact same thing as modern Sonic, but the characters look a bit different, they're not allowed to talk, and they're not allowed to have very much storytelling. And I think that sucks. There's so much wasted potential there. What I want to see is a classic Sonic that goes back to those original ideas of Sonic and is not beholden to the current branding version of what Sonic is. Go back to there being Chaos Emeralds all over the place. Go back to animals being able to talk. And I think even some retconning to streamline and clean things up would be beneficial. Like, for example, take Knuckles. Knuckles has been such a problematic character in Sonic for so long because the original core concept of his character is in direct conflict with how they treat the character as a main Sonic character that is important for the branding of the franchise. Knuckles' character is that he is supposed to be the guardian of the Master Emerald on Angel Island, but he's also one of the main Sonic characters, so we want to shove him into every single game. So you get to this impasse where either you have to justify why Knuckles isn't on Angel Island every single game, or just completely ignore it, and then people go, Knuckles, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be doing your job? Plus, there's also the weird thing they later introduced with Knuckles' character, that apparently he's supposed to be a treasure hunter, and I have no idea how you treasure hunt when you stay in one place all the time. It really doesn't make any sense, but it's something that we just have to go with because that's what they do. But with the revival of classic Sonic, I see an opportunity to straighten this whole thing out and make it so much better. Classic Knuckles can be the guardian of the Master Emerald that stays put on Angel Island and does his duty, and then modern Knuckles, we remove that from his character. He's no longer the guardian of the Master Emerald. That's no longer a thing. Modern Knuckles is a treasure hunter, and that's his character, and that's what we go forward with. They already basically do that in many Sonic games where they just ignore him being the guardian of the Master Emerald, so I say let's just make it official. Fuck it, delete that part of his character. So many Sonic fans already go, what, you want Knuckles guarding the Master Emerald forever? So clearly people want Knuckles to move beyond that and just let him be a part of the Sonic cast, so just let it happen, and then those questions just go away, that baggage is removed, and everything makes so much more sense. But we still get to preserve the original idea of Knuckles in classic Knuckles, and instead of constantly ignoring it, we can play with that, and we can tell classic Knuckles' story that rely on him being the guardian of the Master Emerald and really do something with that, rather than trying to skirt around it all the time. I think stuff like that would be so much better than the nonsense they've been doing for decades. So, I guess, in that sense, I do agree with people who say they want classic Sonic to die. I agree with that. I want the idea of Sonic and classic Sonic to die, and I instead want there to be this Sonic and that Sonic. Two different Sonics that one is not the main one and one is the side one is not the current one and one is the old one. Just two different versions of Sonic that get to exist in parallel as equals, and maybe even more new versions of Sonic. Why not? And while you're at it, why don't you bring back some other old versions of Sonic that have been killed that fans like and would be happy to see again? Make that SatAM Season 3 that people have been asking for forever. The Archie comics are gone, and I doubt there's much that can be done about that because of business stuff, but I know a lot of comic fans that feel that the Archie comics were better because they had the freedom to do whatever they wanted. They were not beholden to the Sonic branding the way the IDW comics are, and that is something that you could absolutely bring back. Start a new comic series. Let Ian Flynn do whatever he wants with Sonic, no limitations. He gets full creative control to make his own version of Sonic. That's not something I would personally be interested in, but I bet you many Sonic fans would be, and they'd probably prefer that to the comics we have now. This push for the one unified Sonic, I think, is the polar opposite direction Sonic should be going in, and I do not at all think it's a good idea for the franchise. Next time Sonic Team feels like pushing Sonic in another brand new direction, maybe instead of plowing over what came before, you just add that on to a growing list of many different Sonics that can exist, and then everyone gets what they want.